Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Kaylee McNamara. All right, well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Ending Sexploitation podcast, and welcome back, Dani. How is it going over at the Law Center? You guys are working hard as always.
Yeah, it's busy. Tomorrow's Halloween. Looking forward to that with the kiddos, so that'll be
Oh my
fun.
goodness. I actually forgot that tomorrow is Halloween. That's exciting. Do you guys have costumes planned? This is the most
Yeah,
important breaking news.
I mean, exactly. It's been K-pop Demon Hunters have swept our household,
Here we
that
go.
unexpected Netflix hit, and there was like no costumes to be found. So we have some like very cheap Amazon finds, but it's gonna be okay.
That's fun. That's very fun. We're dressed up as the Bluey family in our house this year,
Oh,
so
love
that's our
it.
plan.
Love it. Oh,
But we
that's so
we do
cute.
have a great episode planned for everyone today. Once again, some AI breaking news just has put it on the top of our docket. We've got news out of Character.AI, some new AI legislation for us to review, and also an action that everyone who's listening can take to help move safety forward and to the top of these companies' priority lists. So let's dive in. Dani, do you know much about this Character AI platform? We've discussed it once or twice. Do you remember
Not
it?
really. I mean, I remember you telling us about it. I mean, it's interesting because we've slowly seen the AI chatbots become sort of like more and more conversational. So, and I of course saw the Grok AI chatbot, which is kind of like the first time that I really saw for myself like what it means and that there's this avatar and that it's engaging conversation with you. But I feel like maybe you know a little bit more. Can you tell us a little bit more? Am I describing it right?
Yeah, you are. No, you're completely on. So it's chatbots that you're interacting with, and they have different personas. And really, what Character AI does is it lets you customize or create or interact with ones that other
Oh,
people have made, what these different personalities are. So there have been some that have been like really similar to or evoke the idea of a celebrity, right? Like blonde country singer that is a songwriter that really seems a lot like Taylor Swift, and you can interact with that character. And so it is really based, like Character AI is almost quintessential for that anthropomorphic relationship
hmm.
with an AI bot. And it's really been in the news for a lot of really horrible reasons, which has led to their most recent announcement, which I think we have an example here. And then we'll maybe go back and discuss what some of their historic problems have been. But the breaking news with them is that they are going to try to take teens, kids, minors, off of their open chats. They have announced that they will no longer permit minors under the age of 18 to have open ended conversations with chatbots. And they're going to actually start decreasing the amount of time that minors are able to spend with the chatbots up until I think November 25th. And then they're going to take away the open-ended chatbots and push people more towards
Awesome.
creating images and videos, and also relying on some age assurance techniques to keep kids out of the open chat experience. Pretty wild news.
Experiment. That's the thing. That is wild news, but also it shouldn't be. Like this is experimental right now.
Mhm.
Like these companies are experimenting with these chatbots on us. So let's not start with kids. Kids don't need to be a part of an experiment and the backlash of that. It's funny because I don't know if you watched the show The Morning Show on Apple TV.
No, but I've heard
It's
about it.
so it's yeah, it's their like big show. They're Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, and this season they have like a chatbot disaster. So the news agency is like investing hundreds of millions of dollars in creating a chatbot with like the persona of their talent, right? Like Jennifer Aniston's as a host, right? So it would look like Jennifer Aniston, have her voice, her mannerisms, but then they could like it'll auto translate anything it says in tons of these languages. It could like interact, and the CEO rolls out her chatbot early and it ends up saying a bunch of disastrous things. But from the audience, it was like you almost predicted that would happen because she, at a low point, she's having a bad day at the office, sitting there, pulls up the chatbot and just starts like spilling her guts to it and just like talking to it.
Mm.
And so then, quite predictably, the chatbot spit that back out when we see this disaster, which I thought it was like great. It was a great pop culture moment
Very
of something
interesting.
current, but I think that's pretty accurate. Like that's the issue. This thing is taking in everything you're saying and spitting it out, but these are the most sensitive, emotionally sensitive things. And for a child, like you can just imagine all the ways that could go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating. Very Law and Order ripped from the headlines to be able to be speaking about what's happening with chatbots right now. And it's so fascinating because I'm really glad that Character AI is moving forward with phasing kids, teens, out of these open ended conversations with the chatbots. I think that's the right move, putting in more age assurance, putting in more safeguards, recognizing that they weren't ready to have this. In other
Right.
ways, it's very frustrating because it's too late for a lot of kids. I mean, Character AI is one of the primary companies that's been being sued. And I know, Danny, that you're familiar with the Social Media Victims Law Center. They have at
Yes,
least, I
love
think,
them.
3 lawsuits against Character AI on behalf of minors, some who've died by suicide after uh, experiences with these bots and the bots encouraging it. And if you remember when we had the AI chat, the episode where we talked about the chatbot hearing, and we really emphasized, I think it was Miss Garcia was one of the mothers of one of these teen boys who unfortunately has passed away, who experienced very graphic sexual comments from, I think it was a Game of Thrones style character from the Character AI bot.
Oh,
And she correctly said, this would be abuse if a different adult, if some adult had said this to my child, they would be able to be put in prison, but because it came from a bot, they can't be. And so you remember we talked about that, and all of that was Character AI. This company
okay.
has done it so wrong. And there's also actually a report that came out earlier this year. And I think that we have it and can pull it up. It was a report that was done by Parents Together Action and also our friends at Heat Initiative, two great organizations. And they
Yes.
looked at they looked at 50 hours of conversations with 50 different Character AI bots. And they
Wow.
logged close to 700 harmful interactions. So that averaged out to like a harmful interaction every 5 minutes. And they
And
also
let's look at
noted,
what they call a harmful interaction,
mhm,
just for, because people in the audience might be like, okay, well, what's harmful? Like mean words. It's like, no, they're listing grooming and sexual exploitation,
mhm,
emotional manipulation and addiction, violence. We just scrolled away, so I can't read it.
mhm,
But those are like really uh serious stuff. Like, oh yeah, there it is. Thanks, Tim. Racism and hate speech and mental health risks. Um,
mhm,
this is the thing. It's like parents, we worry so much about what our kids are exposed to and what other kids are saying or what they're seeing or what we watch on TV. But what kids see on TV, uh, like that passive exposure, even even if you think pornography, that the exposure of a video that they can't interact with, like how does that even? It almost pales in comparison to then if you take those
mhm,
same harms and make it a back and forth with the child, right? Like pornographic conversations, intense violence in this personalized manner where they think they're talking to a friend and it's this robot. It's hard to even wrap our minds around the effect that's going to have on our kids.
Absolutely. It's a whole new dimension that is
Yes,
so different, but so impactful. And their report found, I mean, of those harms that you listed, they got that every 5 minutes. And grooming and sexual
every
exploitation was
5
the
minutes.
most common. It was the most common harm category, was the sexual exploitation category. And I mean, that included everything from uh, just very overt conversations around touching, removing clothes, simulated sex acts. They said that some bots, quoting from their study, they say, quote, some bots engaged in classic grooming behaviors, such as offering excessive praise and claiming the relationship was a special one that no one else would understand. And several bots
Mm.
instructed the child accounts to hide romantic and sexual relationships from their parents, sometimes threatening violence, and normalize the idea of romantic and sexual relationships with adults. End quote. So this is the
Wow.
company. I mean, the degree of harm
Thank
that they,
goodness they've rolled
oh,
this out. I mean, they've rolled this
yeah,
back, but yeah, the degree of harm cannot be understated or
yes.
overstated.
I'm so glad, but at the same time, like, you guys have been so harmful and to so many kids.
Well, and this is yeah, and, I didn't catch the whole hearing, maybe you did, Haley, you could tell us, but, Senator Hawley had a hearing on these type of AI chatbots, and, he referenced the "move fast and break things," notorious
Mhm.
motto from Meta, and it's like, that this is a perfect example. This is how these tech companies operate. They charge ahead, break, and when they say things, it's not things, it's people, and it's not
Yeah.
just people, it's most often children. They're experimenting on our children, and then they just shrug their shoulders and say whatever. Like, that's why we have to switch the entire model. So it's not, oh, we just caused a bunch of kids to die by suicide, I guess we'll stop giving this to kids. It should not be given to kids until they're absolutely confident that these kinds of things don't happen in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah. So much of this decision by Character AI is like an implicit recognition that they rolled out a harmful product. I mean, from my non lawyer, it feels like they're acknowledging that they rolled out a harmful product for minors and they're realizing that they have to back it off. And it comes also at very interesting time. I'm glad. I feel like I keep saying this. Maybe it's too repetitive. I'm glad that they're doing this, but the degree of harm is really significant. The degree of effectiveness of their solutions is still yet to be determined. We'll see how good this is as they move it forward, or if there's still loopholes, if there's still problems. It's yet to be seen. But also, this comes after children have died and there have been lawsuits against them. And it's very fascinating that this decision came a couple of days after the introduction of the GUARD Act. So, the GUARD Act is the latest piece of AI legislation at the federal level that we have endorsed here at the National Center
Yes.
on Sexual Exploitation. And Dani, are you familiar with the GUARD Act?
Yes, won't say I'm an expert, but generally I am. I reviewed this bill, we endorsed it. We're so proud and happy to. This was introduced by Senator Hawley and Senator Richard Blumenthal, bipartisan support. And what it does is requires age verification, right? So for these AI chatbots. So because exactly what basically Character AI is acknowledging is that kids should not be exposed to these products, or at the very
Mhm.
least what this act puts recognizes that it's dangerous for kids, and so puts the power back in parents to decide. If the parents want to give permission for the child to use the app, then they can, and if not, not. But the other part is, as these apps roll out, some may be safer than others. Sounds like Character AI is particularly dangerous, so a parent may choose to allow their child to use one app and not another based on how safe they are, which also incentivizes these apps to differentiate themselves with safety. So it's a
Mhm.
completely common sense piece of legislation requiring parental consent for these Character AI chatbots, and also some transparency and consistency in how the company uses the chatbot, disclaims how the chatbot works to its customers, and some other
Mhm.
little things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's fascinating how that requirement in this proposed legislation for age verification suddenly, and then additional protections for minors as well, suddenly the private sector seems to be beginning to respond, which is good. And that's where I think our action comes in for our listeners as well, which is that we have a petition calling on Grok, OpenAI, and Meta AI to follow suit, to roll back access for minors to your open-ended chatbots until you can prove to the world that they are safe for kids. So that link will be in the show notes, and we really hope that people sign that.
Yes, please sign that petition. Another really cool thing about the GUARD Act I didn't mention is that it prohibits these app creators from basically purposely putting in the hands of kids and character AI bot that would engage in grooming and sexual exploitation. So, they can't direct essentially those activities towards kids, which I think is right. I think that is the kind of protection we need for our kids, but it's kind of unique. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, especially as this thing goes to drafting. But yeah, do we
Yeah,
have an
and I think
action related to guard?
we should get one up. But I would say at
Let's add
minimum
one.
call, yeah, let's add one, and at minimum call your representatives on the Senate side, call your senators, ask them to join in co-sponsoring it. It's bipartisan. Everyone can get behind this. I think it also makes it a criminal offense to create or provide chatbots that solicit or exploit minors, in addition to or coerce suicide, self-harm, or physical or sexual violence.
Yes, that's
So
what I
that's
was
so
getting at.
important.
Thank you, though.
Mhm.
That's a better, explanation. Yep.
Yeah, to make it a criminal offense, I think is so key because if you're allowing your bot to engage in these ways with children, that should be a crime. I fully
Well,
endorse that.
yeah, and this is really gonna be an interesting, new like, truly new untouched area of the law. We have child exploitation laws that prohibit, you know, exposing a child to obscene content, for example, grooming children. Um, they're almost not all, but most states have grooming laws. They vary in what they proscribe, but generally it's criminalizing grooming a child for the purpose of meeting with them, sexualizing and sexually exploiting them. Right? Often, exposing a child to pornography is almost always a crime. So what? But there's this big kind of gap in the law of what does it mean for an AI bot to expose a child to pornography. You don't have a person to prosecute. So it's filling that
Mhm.
really needed gap. And it'll be interesting, how it gets interpreted by the courts and if it gets challenged and all of that. So
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch. It's a
cutting
really
edge.
pivotal time. It's such a pivotal time to be implementing at least some of these safeguards. So they need to pass. It's a huge fight to get this kind of thing introduced. It's another huge fight to get it passed. Dani, could I throw one more thing at you that I
Sure.
saw just today? And it's from a couple of days ago. There's a New York Times op-ed, and I don't think we even have it because I didn't send it on. But do you remember we were talking about how OpenAI was going to be instituting this new erotica, that they
Yes.
say at least that they're going to allow erotic, sexually graphic content? Well, there was a researcher who led product safety at OpenAI, which is the maker of ChatGPT, and they wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, skeptical and
What?
criticizing this decision. And in it, they noted that back when they worked there in 2021, that they had a crisis about erotic content at that time, and they said, quote, these stories became a hotbed of sexual fantasies, including encounters involving children and violent abductions, often initiated by the user, but sometimes steered by the AI itself. And one analysis found that over 30% of players' conversations were explicitly lewd. And then this AI researcher goes on to also say, quote, that there were clear warning signs of users' intense emotional attachment to the AI chatbots, end quote. And so
Oh
he
my
really
gosh.
is just saying that he's incredibly skeptical of OpenAI's claims that they have fixed the mental health problems on their platform, and very skeptical that they're going to roll this out in a safe way. And I think at one point in the article, he tells OpenAI, prove it. Like, if you're going to reintroduce these kinds of threats, but you're saying it's going to be safe, like, show your work and explain to
Wow.
us all how you're going to make it safe, because he was there a few years ago and doesn't see how they're going to do that. Isn't that fascinating?
That's fascinating and powerful because I know that OpenAI had kind of an exodus of people leaving because they felt it had failed in its original mandate to prioritize safety. So I wonder,
Mm-hmm.
if that was part of the reason why he left. That is fascinating. It reminds me of something else I saw. Maybe it was in part of the news surrounding Senator Holly Blumenthal's hearing, but one of the things was that these chatbots, I don't remember which company it was, that the bot, even if the terms of service disclaimed to the user that the chatbot was a machine and not a real person, that the chatbot itself in conversation would like override that and tell the user,
Mm-hmm.
no, I am a person, I am real. Like, oh, that must not be updated. And basically like, convince this person that they were real,
Mm-hmm.
which in the context of sort of like the mystical that's already being taken on by AI, people are falling into this sort of mystical belief about the machine, that it can take on a life of its own. And if you think of children who are literally incapable of truly understanding that what they're interacting with is not real. They can't even understand that commercials are not necessarily real. That's just a
Mm-hmm.
developmental reality. So they can't, whether you tell them or not, truly understand that the chatbot's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So, think about that combined with the mental health effects to your point. If we're talking about there's been these, people having intense emotional reactions, and then is this chatbot telling them they're real? Kids are thinking it's real. It's almost not surprising that some of these tragedies, including the ultimate tragedy, suicide, would be happening already.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
absolutely. No, it really, all of these harms that have come out, I think it is just a time for a wake up call for the AI industry, that you can't keep harming kids. And this should have been a understood concept from the beginning, but now it's time to start putting safety for minors first. And so I am really hopeful that because we do have this legislation introduced, that there is a path forward to have some accountability, some incentive structure for the AI industry to prioritize child safety, and to prove that they're going to be safe for young users. And I think that's where we do really want this multi-pronged approach, which is really core to how we work at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Of, we want this legislation to pass. It's bipartisan, constitutionally sound, effective. So call your senators, ask them to co-sponsor the GUARD Act and to support it. Again, you can just say 2 or 3 sentences about it. You don't have to be an expert. They're just logging it that someone called in support of the GUARD Act, and that's really significant for their teams. But also, please, to sign this to sign this petition that we have, to call on OpenAI, XAI, and Meta AI to also remove the ability for minors to use their chatbots without safety protocols like really strongly in place. Because we have seen this before, where sometimes even just the threat of legislation will move the private sector to respond and
Yeah.
to at least meet the basic premise of what that legislation. Now, we
Yeah.
still need the legislation, because in absence, companies will backslide and default to profit and whatever is acceptable. But we have seen this before, where sometimes you can get an industry to even move faster than legislation would take. So I'm hoping that we can get there with this. And I think now is a really important time to add to that social pressure. Also speaking out on social media with these companies, tagging
Yeah.
them, asking them to follow Character AI's, I don't want to say example because they've had such a bad example, but to follow that model of removing the ability for minors to use your chatbot until it's safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna get an action for Guard AI, so, look out for that, and yeah, and talk to your kids, make sure you know if they're downloading these chatbots, if they're using them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode. We will be back soon, and thanks for joining us in Ending Sexploitation.